One of the important elements of a good right hand position is maintaining a flat wrist through here. If you do this, sort of like making a fist, which is similar to the finger movements of playing the guitar, if you do that and arch the wrist up and try that, it's very uncomfortable. Doesn't work very well. If you sink the wrist down like that, same thing. Not particularly comfortable. Feels best when your wrist is flat, like that. And when you're making these little fists like this, I mean, that's what you're doing when you're practicing for hours on end or doing a gig. You're flexing, extending, flexing, extending. So this position of the flat wrist is very important. Another important element of a good right hand position is maintaining a straight wrist through here. Again, if we do that motion of making a fist, which is similar to plucking the strings, and we kink the hand to our left, your left if you're playing, and you do that, it's not very comfortable. You feel a lot of tension. Likewise, if you turn your hand hard to the right, also very tense, doesn't feel very good. But straight, yeah, feels very good, effortless, very little tension involved at all. So it's important that the wrist be straight and flat because the tendons that move the fingers move in a little tunnel called the carpal tunnel. When the wrist is out of alignment, either arched up too high, sunk down too low, turned left too hard, turned right too much, like that, more pressure or friction is put on the tendons that are trying to move through the carpal tunnel. When that pressure and friction is excessive, you can develop carpal tunnel syndrome or tendonitis. So the wrist should also stay straight in order to execute good rest strokes and free strokes correctly to get a good tone. We'll look at that in a little bit. Now, how do you find this great right hand position? Well, first thing to do, just let your arm hang down to your side, totally relaxed. Shake it around, shake your hand around, shake it all out. You'll notice when you're really relaxed, totally loose, that your wrist is straight. It's flat. It's not arched up like that. It's not sunk down like that. It's flat. If I turn, you can also see my wrist is straight. It isn't turned that way. It's not turned that way. It's straight. So just let it hang there. Shake it out. Then make a fist with your fingers. Just curl them up like that, lightly. You don't have to be real tight-fisted about it. Just loosely into a fist. And then keep everything like it is and bring your arm up onto the guitar into playing position. Again, you're loose. Everything's hanging down straight and flat. Fingers are loose. Then make your loose fist. Bring your arm up onto the guitar. Now when you bring your arm onto the guitar, and your hand is in this loose fist, set it so that the thumb is above the rosette, the little design around the sound hole, that it's above the rosette at the bottom of the sound hole right there. Don't come above the sound hole like that and not down here. So just bring it around, set it so the thumb is above the rosette. And when you set your hand on the guitar, be sure that the finger segments here are absolutely flat on the strings, like that. Don't let your little finger side come up like that, and don't set it so that the index finger side is not quite on there. Make sure all four are flat, absolutely flat on those strings. Your thumb, of course, is above the rosette at the bottom of the sound hole. Next, take your thumb and just slide it like this on the strings. Don't lift off the strings and move it. Just slide it along there until the tip of the thumb is in between the 5th and 6th strings. When you do that, make sure the hand stays absolutely flat on the strings here. Don't let the finger come off like that or the little finger side raise up like that. Absolutely flat as you move the thumb out to the side like that. So now, here we are. The thumb is in between the 5th string and the 6th string here. The fingers are still flat on the strings. We're not allowing one side of the hand to raise up like that or the other side to raise up either. They're just flat on those strings like that. Now, slowly uncurl the fingers like this and set each finger on a string. The index finger on the 3rd string, the middle finger on the 2nd string, the ring finger, the A finger on the 1st string, just like that. Then you're going to push up on your fingertips. In other words, you're going to straighten out the fingers a little bit. And as you do so, your thumb will pull in towards your index finger. You'll notice your whole hand raises up at the same time, just like that. So you were flat on the strings, your thumb was in between the 5th string and 6th string. You uncurl the fingers slowly, each finger on its own string, and just push onto the fingertips. Let the thumb come in towards the index finger. Here it is from a little further away so you can see. Once again, the thumb is in between the 5th string and 6th string. The fingers are flat on these strings here. And notice the wrist here is flat from having brought it onto the guitar from its relaxed position. So the wrist is flat, and then again we uncurl the fingers, rest each finger on its own string, and then push up on the fingertips, straightening them out. The thumb again comes towards the index finger like that. When you uncurl your fingers, setting them on the first 3 strings, be sure that the tips of the fingers are still together. Don't splay the fingers apart like that. Allow them, keep them together, firmly together. And the little finger against the A finger, against the ring finger. Don't let it splay off on its own or get tucked behind here. Just keep it lightly against the A finger. Let's review looking straight on. We started out with the hand hanging by our sides, really loose. We made a fist, brought that onto the guitar so that the thumb fell at the bottom of the sound hole like that. We made sure our fingers were flat on the strings here. We moved the thumb out to the left so it's in between the 5th and 6th strings. And then we slowly uncurled the fingers, resting I, M, A on the first 3 strings. We straightened out the fingers, pushing up on the fingertips. The thumb came in. And there's our very nice hand position. We've got a straight wrist going through here. It's not kinked this way, not kinked that way. Straight wrist. And it's flat. It's not arched up, and it's not sinking down like that. Looks really good. Now you really don't have to worry much about your arm position on the guitar, because if you do this correctly, when you bring your arm onto the guitar and you set it as I instructed, to set it, the thumb, so that it's at the bottom of the sound hole over the rosette, your arm will automatically be in the right spot. You don't need to do anything to adjust it. If you have long arms like I do, it's going to fall on the forearm. If you have shorter arms, it's going to fall closer to the bicep, like that. Your thumb position should be about like this, out to the left of your index finger. In other words, not behind the index finger where they would collide with each other, and certainly not going into the hand this way, but out to the left of the index finger. Not too far out though either. You want the thumb to feel like it's part of the of the hand motions with the rest of the fingers. And it's all interrelated. If your wrist is kept flat, you'll probably be okay. If you sink your wrist down like you're not supposed to, what will tend to happen is your thumb will go too parallel with the strings and also shoot out to the left. if you arch the wrist up too high, it'll bring the thumb in too close to the index finger. So again, keep the wrist flat, and you should be pretty good. Looking at it from this angle, once again, if the wrist sinks down like that, it puts the thumb parallel with the strings, and when it plays, the thumb pulling out is going to cause it to pull outward, producing a very thin, clanky sound, which is no good. So again, that wrist has to be flat to help the thumb produce a good tone. And again, when you arch up too high, it brings the thumb in closer to the index finger, and then the two collide with each other, and that's no good either. So once again, everything's interrelated, but if that wrist stays flat or slightly arched is okay too, like that, then that will help put the thumb in the correct position. If you're playing on the 3rd string and need to move to the 6th string or to the 1st string, you don't change strings by adjusting the wrist position. In other words, my wrist is flat right now. To go to the 6th string, I don't arch the wrist up to reach the 6th string. And likewise, if I'm on the 3rd string and have to go to the 1st string, I don't sink the wrist down in order to reach the 1st string. Instead, everything stays the same. The alignment, the flatness of the wrist doesn't change as I go from the 3rd string to the 6th string to the 1st string. Nothing changes, stays the same. Simply move on the loose skin of the arm so that everything stays the same. Everything's locked into place, not tightly or anything like that, but everything moves as a unit. One other adjustment I want to mention in the hand position occurs when you're trying to change tone qualities or using certain techniques. For instance, an extreme example is if I'm going from trying to play a fast rest stroke scale. What I'm going to do is lean the hand back to lessen the resistance of the strings to the fingernails so I can play faster. On the other extreme, if I were going to try to play a very thin, bright free stroke, what I would do is bring the hand forward towards the floor, curl the fingers quite a lot. So I'm pulling from underneath the string like that to get a very thin, bright free stroke. But notice what happens. It's all done moving on the loose skin of the arm, the forearm on the guitar. I'm not changing positions by arching the wrist or sinking the wrist down or changing the alignment of my hand. All that remains unchanged. Flat wrist, straight wrist alignment from there to here. That's just a movement of the hand forward or back, again on the loose skin of the arm. Contrary to what you often see in books and photographs, especially of the great Andres Segovia, having the knuckles parallel with the strings is not always desirable for many people. Now, it worked great for Segovia and does work well for some people. But for a lot of other people, it doesn't work particularly well. Not only because of the bent wrist position producing stress on the tendons, but also it doesn't produce a good tone quality for many people. Since most guitarists produce their best sound quality when playing on the left sides of their fingernails, the most useful and comfortable position is usually one that's actually angled to the left. In other words, a straight wrist, not kinked to the right. But again, everyone is different. And of course, this worked for Segovia beautifully, so it's something to experiment with. But again, I would caution for most people, the straight wrist is going to work out the best. I have to give you a little bit of a warning not to interpret these hand position instructions too rigidly, because it's going to vary from player to player. Variables such as finger length, thumb length, the ratio of the thumb length to the finger length, the ratio of the length of the A finger to the I finger and to the M finger, the shape and length of the fingernails. My nails are very long. And forearm length. these are all going to require adjustments to your basic hand position. And likewise with the thumb, an excessively long or short thumb, an extremely flexible or inflexible tip joint, and differences in players' length of the thumbnail and shape of the thumbnail will require adjustments to be made to the thumb position as well. So be flexible, don't be too rigid in interpreting these instructions, but they do give you a good general idea of what you're shooting for.